Hey everyone! By everyone, I mean two of you. Thank you for subscribing to this channel. Anyway, there's a lot of talk about how Framer is going to switch to JavaScript, and a lot of new beginners are asking questions like, "Oh, should I start learning JavaScript instead?" And the answer is yes, you probably should. It's not that you, it's not that it's like a better language or something. It's just I think it's gonna encourage you to explore other environment other than just Framer, because once you know how to write JavaScript, you could just bring that skill and apply directly to the web browsers. So that's great. And rewriting CoffeeScript to JavaScript is actually very easy. And if you're just using Framer for simple prototype, you probably won't have to rewrite much anyway. So I think today we're going to talk about function and object and class syntax in CoffeeScript, and we're going to explore how to write those in JavaScript. Um, well, I never really prepare my videos, so everything is going to be slow and annoying. I'm sorry about that. So here we go. Let's start with function. So let's say I want to write a function to print out something. Say hello. Okay, simple enough. So if we want it to actually do anything, we have to call it. And there we go. We got the hello over there. And next, of course, you would want to pass in like a name or something. So we can just do an old school here. Let's say undefined because I haven't really passed in anything yet. So let's say, what is the cool name? John. Hi, John. So this is a part that might cause some confusion if you're very new to CoffeeScript or Framer in general. You can also write just, you can omit the parentheses and it will still work. So how does it work for, say, two things? So pretty much you can just write it like that. We understand that you're just omitting the parentheses. And I think CoffeeScript keeps the parentheses around for good reason. Well, the first reason is that you probably cannot call a function if it doesn't have any variables. So it's a good idea to keep those around. Okay, so there is that. Next one is object. Okay, so let's take a look at something you're very familiar with. Creating a new layers, and background color is blue, and size is 200. If you write size, it basically means set the width and height to the same number, and you can do the same thing with point. Point also set both x and y value into the same number that you pass in here. So if I say like align center, it's automatically gonna center my thing there. I'm actually pointing at the screen, but you cannot see my finger. Okay, but oh yeah, but you should know that if you have something like x 200, these values always override these generic value. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, so let's take a look at this. You're creating a new layers with these properties, but a lot of people don't realize that what you're really doing is that you're passing in, this is a function, and you're passing in an object. So it really is like this. You can see here that everything is perfectly the way they are. And this really is a function. That's it. That's pretty quick. Yeah, so even when you write things like layer a dot states equal 1 rotation 45 to what you're really writing is assigning the state to an object that have 1 as a key, and then rotation as the only property that it has. I probably shouldn't have removed those lines. Yeah, so you can see it still work. And note that you're actually passing in a string, and Framer is being smart and automatically look to the state for the key of that name. You're not really passing in this object, you're just passing in a string, and that Framer look up in the state for that one. Anyhow, so yeah, I think when we switch to JavaScript, it's pretty much how you're gonna write state, because it is the way to define object in JavaScript. This also, I think the new syntax, this it's going to be a little different, but you're certainly going to pass in things like this. It's certainly ugly, yes, it is. CoffeeScript is much nicer with all of these natural language compare thing. Those that object, function, and actually a little bit of class too. Huh. I guess we ran out of things to talk already. It's only been like 5 minutes, so okay. So let's just keep going. One cool thing you can do with, let's say, what cool thing you can do with function and object. So say if you have a really simple prototype that have a lot of layers that have similar properties, you're probably going to be using loop or something like that. But sometimes you couldn't use loop. Maybe it's like a text layer that all text have like the same type or something. In that case, you can define a object that contains all the default variables and properties. And then every time you assign a new text layer, you're going to just throw that object in. So let's give it a, so let's say text default is an object. Let's write them in JavaScript style for now. So font size, say 24. I think the default is 16 or something. Just make something big. Oh yeah, we had to do private stuff. With the color of blue and the font weight, I just want to make it different enough from the default style. Okay, so let's say that is the text that you want to use all the time. So let's create a text layer. All right. So one thing we can do here is we can pass in just that default variables. It's going to apply it. And you can do this for a bunch of stuff. So it's kind of Neat. But wait, how would you change like the text itself? Like if I change up here, then it's going to change all the text, right? So can we do this? It's not going to work because now CoffeeScript thought that we're passing in. We thought that text default is a function, and we're passing in an object with the text property into that function. So that's all messed up. So essentially, what we want to do here is that we want to pass in this object that contain these custom properties together with the property in text default. And potentially we might want to override something in text default as well. So we need to find a way to merge these two objects together and pass them into text layer. So I think Framework comes with Lodash installed, Lodash or underscore, one of those. And they have a default function that you can use to merge object together without overriding the original object. But I don't really use it very often. If you want to explore this, just Google Lodash or underscore and look for underscore dot defaults, and you can see the docs for it, and it's really easy to follow. I'm more familiar with just using object assign. So that's temporary comment out this stuff. Later on, if you ever decide to develop in like a normal web environment and not Framer, you would have to import Lodash underscore on your own. So using object is native JavaScript, so it's always be there. So it's a little bit more reliable. So object is a type of JavaScript, just like array and number and other types. And assign is one of the method of the class. So what it does is that it's going to return, it's going to create a, it's going to return the result of a merge of a bunch of objects. So let's say I have 3 objects here, and I have A equal 1, B 2, C 3. What it's going to return to me is a new object that contain all 3 of this. So in case you cannot see this tiny text, you can see it here. This is the output of the print. But there's a little bit of caveat here. So actually 2. So the order of merging is from the right hand to the left hand. So if I have A here, it's going to merge this third object into the first object and override the A property. So if in case you can't see again, I'm going to copy and paste it over here. So you can see that it's override my 1 here and give me back the 3. So it would override from the right hand side to the left hand side. So again, if I do A equal 2 and here, we don't really need this to be this big. There we go. 6, just so we have something different. It's going to return me a new object. Not new object, it's an old object actually, that have value 6, like 1, 2, 3. So the second caveat is that it doesn't return a new object, which sucks. So let's say I have an object called existing object, and I have A equal 1. So we're going to replace the first object with my existing object conveniently, and we're going to do something here. We're going to print existing object before and after. So you can see on my output here, the first time I do the print, it gives, oh, the first time I do the print, it's giving me a=1, but the second time I print, it gives a=6. Object assign modified the first object that I pass in, so it merged these three together into this existing object and modified it at the same time. So generally, that's kind of bad. Sometimes you don't want to override things at all. So I guess one thing to remember is to always use a anti-object. So object assign wouldn't modify the output. Wouldn't modify the original object. So you can see here now, both of my output is the same. A is 1. All right, so let's use that. I'm going to remove this, remove all this stuff. I'm going to re-enable this one here. So we're going to rewrite this using object assign syntax. Object.assign. So it's a function that return a object, and we're passing that object into the constructor of text layer. All right, and now inside this, we're going to pass in one empty object, so it doesn't modify our default. And then finally, we're going to pass in a third object, and inside this object, we can define whatever override or new properties that we want. So let's say the text is not going to be hello world, that's lame. Let's say hi world. Now you can see it's working, and like we mentioned before, it's going to override same properties in the other object. So say here, if I do this red, it's going to become red. Yep. Yep. So that's working, and we can repeat this all the time. So we're doing with like a semi Coffeescript and semi JavaScript syntax here. So if you want to write all of this in Coffeescript short syntax, it will be like this, and you don't have to do this open and closing little pointy thing here, and it will still work. And this is, I guess, a little easier to read. Of course, the best is to extend like a new class, and you can store these maybe with some more behavior stuff. But I'm just lazy. I don't want to touch class until I absolutely have to. So this is my go-to method. Okay, so let's see what else we can do with this function and object. So we talk about how to make something reusable, understand how syntax is compiled down to JavaScript. What else can? Oh, there's like this cool little thing that used to be very unique to Coffeescript, is that you're going to have a fat arrow function. But now it's available in JavaScript too, but it used to be like a Coffeescript thing. Actually, I don't know if it's a Coffeescript thing. I think lambda I think it's called like a lambda function. If you know what I'm talking about and know that I'm wrong, please tell me. I'm probably going to take a trip to Google later to really confirm my knowledge. But yeah. So let's say you have a thing like, let's create a new layer. And when you click on this layer, we want to just print out the click coordination point, I believe. Oh, shit. Yes. So this is the coordination of my click. Wait, this doesn't really help with what I'm trying to do. All right, sorry. Okay. So the fat arrow have to do with the this keyword, which is add in CoffeeScript. So if you do print this here, it's going to print out layer A itself. You can also use add as a shorthand. Also print out layer A. You can print out my layer name. Oh, I didn't name it. Very creative. So you don't really need to use a dot notation here, and it will still work. That's how cool it is. Okay, so a normal function would create a new scope. So when you write, I shouldn't have removed everything that I write earlier. So let's say we have a function here again. What we're really doing here is creating like a new scope. So anything I write inside the function, say hello, it's gonna have a new container. So if I have a new variable, say new var equal 10 inside the function, and even if I call that function and then say print new var, it's not going to understand me because this variable doesn't exist outside of say hello. This is also one of the reasons why if you have a callback function and you have like the data being retrieved inside the callback function, you cannot use it outside of that callback function. You have to do some funky stuff. So one way you can get around with this type of thing is that you can assign this variable to something outside of this scope, right? So if I have a new var here equal 0, and now I print new variables, you can see that it's now print out the correct number because we are not creating a new variables, but we are modifying something already exists. But anyway, yeah, that's the. I think I'm way off here. So that's how scope work. Anything you create, any new variables you create inside a function, it wouldn't be linked to the outside of it. And scope would work in. You can nest scope. So if you have a function inside a function, it works the same. So anyway, a fat arrow function wouldn't modify the scope. So anything I create, okay. So if I have the scope here and say hello, wait, would this work? I wonder if this worked. Yeah, it still wouldn't work. Never mind. I think it's more like it's more. Yeah, okay. It's more have to do with some other stuff. Sorry about that. So here, if I do this, I click name. You can see that's empty because now this is different. It has more to do here with this word. So now this is referring to window, which is the root of the context that we're in. If I switch it back to like a normal skinny arrow, it's just gonna print out the layer as we expected. So that's cool. You could use it. I couldn't find like an example to use it on top of my head, but I'm gonna circle back to that later. I think it's just cool to know the difference between these two things. So just remember the fat arrow won't modify the scope that you're in, and the skinny arrow does. It's creating a new scope. Scope is also the reason why event doesn't work inside a for loop if you don't use this, like this type of thing, like for 0 to 4. I kind of shoot myself in the foot here. Yeah, why do I do this to myself? But I did it anyway. Sorry. Whenever I cannot come up with a variable's name, I'll just do x. So we have this all weirdness, but just know that this x here is completely different from that x here. So scope is the reason why this thing move, but not the one that I'm click at, because by the time this event happen, x is already a different thing. It would work. It would work though if you do this, because now you're binding this function into x itself when it was still inside the loop. So now it would do things correctly. So that's all because of scope. Okay. All right. So one other thing is that you can immediately call a function right after you write it. So say hello equal this, print hi. So usually it wouldn't work until you call it later, right? You can call it immediately by wrapping it inside a parentheses like this, and then do another one, and then you can see here it's being called. That is because it's executing this piece of code. It's making it a function to execute whatever inside of it. This is useful if you say like create something in a loop that modified the state with a function inside of the loop, and then it's just a little convenient thing. Doesn't really matter. And if you have variables, you can still pass it in the second parentheses. So hi Derek. Oh yeah, I hate this. It's like a really weird thing with Coffeescript. Like string interpolation for some reason only work with. Come on now. Only work with double quote, not single quote. So now that works. All right. A lot of fun stuff, guys. In the next video, let's explore some stuff about class and the design tab, maybe. Cool. Thank you for tuning in, all two of you.